Hello everyone, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for joining me and welcome to my first video, and I'm calling this TED Talks Ruby Rocks. Yes, there's a story behind that, and it all started this morning when I was going to get myself ready for an appointment that I had, and getting a quick pee in before I open the door, and I hear TED Talks. And I'm like, I love TED Talks. I haven't listened to them lately. I should look them up. And then I hear Ruby Rocks. I'm like, yeah, I like to rhyme a lot, but I'm going to write that down. TED Talks, Ruby Rocks. And of course, for Ruby, for me, is has a long history back into, I think, at least 2008 or so. I probably should give you a proper date, where I had this inside that I had the name at one point in my evolution of Ruby. So that made sense to me for Ruby Rocks, and I have had counseling and advising set up, and I called it Ruby Vision Empowerment, and that too was through the lens of seeing things through that persona of that person named Ruby. And so that all made sense to me this morning. So I write things down. I usually text myself, and I'm no wonder my phone is totally full, and my husband can't understand why I have it full. Sending myself messages and saving photos, that'll do it, right? So maybe someday I'll clear it out. So sharing with you today what TED Talks means, and a little bit thinking that there was a guy named Ted, and I really like Ted, and he started that really great platform, and I love to hear all their special guests and all the information. And the whole logo branded was technology, entertainment, and design. I thought, okay, yeah, I like that logo, and I still thought there was a guy named Ted, but apparently it's somebody by the name of Harry Marks. So that's growing on its own, and that brand is known by a lot of people, and we all know that branding is important. And I have that Ruby Vision Empowerment, and I use the three letters as RVE, and someday I'll do something about that when I get some technical help. But so the whole thing with branding and logos, and really sparked something in me this morning. So we all know that things come in threes, and sometimes it's like a negative connotation, like, oh, the third one and we'll be out of this, whatever. But this morning's fun, and I wanted to take you on a big story. First one being that download that I actually hear lots of things in my head. Yes, I'm in a safe space here to tell you. I'm sure somebody will have something to say about that. But the number two was when my appointment and I got together, and I was collaborating with a wonderful woman who says, what's new with you? And I really liked your podcast, but I really think you should do it on your own. And I'm like, oh my gosh, funny enough that I had this whole thing that said TED Talks, Ruby Rocks. I said, do you like it? She goes, yeah, I love it. And it was kind of a hard show to follow, because that's got a really quality name to it. And so then we did our thing, and I came back into the main part of my home here, and I'm reading an article, and it's about Pompeii, and about how they found this loaf of bread that had a logo on it. It had a stamp of the baker, and that was the pride of the baker for putting good quality bread out, and they wanted everyone to know that that was their bread, and if you're getting that bread, that he stood behind it, or he or she stood behind it, and that you wouldn't be getting pieces of stone in your flour, because they used stone mills back then, and that this brand took extra care on making sure that you wouldn't have damage to your teeth, and from the fine pieces of stone that was in there. And I thought, okay, that's really interesting. We're talking about branding, we're talking about bread and flour, and like, I think it was, I'll look it up, what was it, AD, something AD. Oh my gosh, it was way back, like 79 AD from Pompeii, and that's a long time to have a brand. We thought we were doing something new with our logos and our branding, but we haven't. And that's a theme too, is just that, wearing red and talking about things that are coming around, and how I really like to look back and see how they used to do things. So these are like little signs to me to pay attention. And so then the third one was wrapping the series of 3 up to the branding. And the whole freaking rock here was this, that follow me, that I was supposed to pay attention. So leading that all together, I thought, yes, I do see things very differently. Yes, I have been getting the idea that if my personality back in the day was that of Ruby, I certainly love to look into the spectrums of the rainbow and loving the red, but beyond the red, there is the spectrum, beyond the red and in the infrared, that we cannot see with our human eyes. And therefore, if we cannot see it, then we cannot believe it. And that just is this whole thing that I really have a lot of fun with, because we can see information in different ways, hear information in different ways beyond the scope of the human perception. We have radio waves, we have microwaves, we have all kinds of information waves that are coming through. They just don't always show themselves as the way we were taught to see it. So I would love for you to spend some time with me in this journey of how I tend to find these weird ways. I've been doing this for a lot of years. It might feel a little bit foreign to you and quirky. So yeah, if this isn't for you, then thanks for joining me thus far. And if you're sticking with me, then thank you so much. I have lots of information and packets of technology and design and all that kind of thing, that the TED actually, technology too. I have that. And even today I read that Bruce Lee says that the most important power is in the form of being quiet, or that stillness. And I feel like we can do a lot of work in our lives without running around in circles. This is a story. I worked as hairdressing for a lot of years, and I'm just putting myself out there in another embarrassing way. We would have lunch, and I'd be running off into like the local drugstore to find a bag of chips, and I'd be running, really, really, really fast and running in circles. And then I had my good coworker, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Adrian, please hurry up. We don't have a lot of time. And he was like, I move slow, but I know where I'm going, and you're running in circles, and you don't know where you're going. I'm like, oh, boom, yeah, that's a good one. So we learn lessons from everybody's story, and we find our way and firm up things that we can stick with. And I'm firm in the way that I love my synchronicities, and I will stand by that, however that feels and looks to you. There is some benefit in the little packets. I'll try to deliver things in little packets at a time to kind of give you an idea. Yeah, things are happening outside of our scope. And they're the idea that an angle and angel are the same thing, and lots of times information comes through in sparks of light that we can only see just outside of peripheral, and it catches our attention, and it's not always there, but at least it's showing us that there are things happening with around the scope of our perception, and there's a lot of fun to be had to go into that space. So welcome today to this first video of TED Talks Ruby Rocks, and I hope to share with you and learn things from you, and I really want this to be an interactive. And when you gain your footing, and if you say, hey, this happens to me, then please share, and I'd love to have conversations around that. So blessings, our first visit on Ruby Rocks from TED Talks. Thank you, and we'll see you again. Have a great and blessed day.